It's time for a Big Blue Kickoff Live.
Nobody can ever tell you that you couldn't do it, because you did.
On Giants.com.
You know what I saw? New York Giant pride.
And the Giants mobile app.
17-14 is the final. One touchdown, we are world champions. Believe it, and it will happen.
Part of the Giants Podcast Network.
Let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. Have some fun.
Hello, everybody. Happy Monday. Hope you had a great weekend. Welcome to Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the Giants. I am John Schmeelk, joined by Paul Dottino. We're taking your calls at 201-939-4513. We are coming to you live from the Hackensack Meridian Health Podcast Studio. Keep getting better. Paul Dottino.
Hello, John.
Disappointing weekend?
Yes, it was. The Knicks are finished.
Hey, they did it to themselves. They had every opportunity to win that series, and the Pacers might not be the more talented team, but they played like the better basketball team.
Well, it
over
was
the course of the series.
The matchup, as we always say, styles make fights. The matchup of their ultra-fast paced attack really proved to cause some turnover issues for the Knicks.
And I thought they just played cleaner the whole series. They shot a little better. They protected the ball a little bit better. And look, if the Knicks don't, even with all that said, the Knicks don't blow game one the way they did.
Oh, I know.
We could be talking about a game 7 at the Garden tonight. So it is what it is. It was a good season. Fun to see them get to the Eastern Conference Finals again.
It really was.
Having May and June basketball matter, which is great. It's been for folks that are too young, like the 90s in May and June with the playoffs, with the NBA, it was one of the best times of year in New York sports. It was fantastic.
Sure.
So it's good the last couple of years to kind of have that back, which is great, and we'll see what they do moving forward here. But the Giants, now it's time for the NFL to kind of slowly step back in, along with baseball, in the New York sports scene here, Paul.
Yeah, we got two first-place baseball teams.
We do.
How about that? But anyway.
Not the best weekend series against the Dodgers.
No. Thank goodness they salvaged Game 3, though.
Correct. On Friday night, I fell asleep. It was like 5-1 in the 5th inning, and I woke up and I'm like, what in God's name happened to this
know.
game? Anyway, we should talk about football.
I'm sorry, folks.
No, it's my fault. So we're going to have a fun show today. We'll do a brief rundown of what happened at today's OTA. And then we're going to dig a little bit into the 2023 draft class. We did this last year when we looked at the 2021 and 2022 draft class. And not just the Giants. We'll talk about the Giants first and what they did in that draft. We're also going to talk about just lessons that we've learned, go back to some of the debates that we had in that draft. And there's actually some really interesting picks in there. So we can talk about, do we rethink our thinking on certain things? Is there anything we have to rethink when it comes to the draft when you take a look at that 2023 NFL draft 2 years in, where you can start kind of figuring out. You don't have definitive conclusions on players yet, but you got a pretty good feel for kind of what it looks like. All right. First ball, OTAs today.
Yes.
First time, pardon me, they did non-red zone competitive stuff. So last year it was tight red zone and high red zone, so inside the 10, between the 10 and the 20, and they kind of went back and forth that way. So this is the first time they had full field practices where the offense is going down the field a little bit, and we saw it.
It was kind of fun.
Second pass of practice, I believe, right? Russell Wilson, deep post, Jalen Hyatt, leaping catch, high points the ball, comes down with it. Really nice catch, and that was a couple of the big plays for the offense, but that was certainly the biggest one.
That, to me, was the highlighted play on offense of the day. And, again, I'm sorry, but, folks, I don't want to get your hopes up, but this spring, Jalen Hyatt has gotten an awful lot of attention. The quarterbacks talk about him a lot. When they throw around the ball at practice, he's getting a lot of action. He's getting a lot of targets.
It also helps that Slayton hasn't been here for a couple practices, and Neighbors is not playing.
I understand.
That helps.
No, I totally understand. Yes. But the good news is, however much you can take advantage of this very limited scenario, he's done it.
Yes, I agree with that. And he looks a little bit bigger in the upper body. We talked about that last week.
His legs look a little bigger,
too. You
think
so? I didn't notice that. I was looking at that. I couldn't quite.
Well, I was down at the end zone when he ran into the end zone, and I'm like looking at him. I'm like, you know what?
He definitely put on some good weight.
Did put on a little bit more weight. I think so. And that'd be the second year in a row for him to be putting on some pounds. So, but he high pointed the ball very well over Paulson Adebo, who was back there. But he climbed the stairs, did Hyatt, and went up and got it. It was a beautiful play.
I mean, like when you start at that level, you can only gain at that point.
This is true.
couple other offensive plays, and we had a couple highlight defensive plays,
Yes.
too, in this practice.
Yes.
I thought it was a great play where Jackson Dart rolled to his left, looked like he was about to run, but then stopped and threw across his. But now he set himself. It wasn't like a fading away across your body throw.
No.
He stopped, reset,
Which is what you should
across
do.
his body, correct, and he got good juice on the ball. I believe that was one of the tight ends. Was that was 84?
It was
yeah,
Johnson.
that was Theo
It was
Johnson.
Theo Johnson.
And then
Yes.
another throw earlier in practice, he threw a little high over the middle, and Thomas Fedoni made a
Yes.
really nice play on a crossover.
He did.
I thought Dart was pretty sharp in practice today. Put good touch on his passes, was pretty accurate. So I thought he had a pretty good day on offense.
I would agree with that. And your guy, Fredoni, today, I watched him a little more closely today because
He's long arms, man. He's long.
he's long. And you know what? For a guy who's that long and that tall, he's not gawky. He's fluid.
Yeah, he is. I
He's
told you.
absolutely fluid. I'm really starting to like him.
Like he's probably a little bit more sudden is the word. He's probably a little bit more sudden than Theo Johnson is. Theo Johnson's a little bit thicker.
Yes, Theo's a
So
little
I
thicker.
think Fedoni's a little bit more sudden than Theo is, though he's not as thick.
Ironically, even though he's only a rookie and he's just coming into the NFL, he looks more fluid, for instance, than Bellinger does.
Yeah, I
when
agree
he's
with
out
that.
there in the passing game.
I agree with that. I'm with you.
Fedoni is. I'm intrigued by him now. The more I see him, the more I'm intrigued.
He has a weird way of running, though. He kind of gets his
Right.
head hunched over,
Right.
kind of like a dinosaur or like a
Yeah,
velociraptor
yeah.
with the way he runs. But other than that, I
But
think
he's
everything's very
fluid.
good,
It
yes.
doesn't appear to impede his routes at all.
And you love the tattoos, so I know you're all about that.
I'm wondering, can he actually hide game plan notes inside of the arm on the tattoo?
Can he paint the
You
game
know?
plan onto
I'm just
the thing?
saying, right?
All right.
Who would notice?
So you had a couple really nice defensive plays in practice. Paul.
Yes.
Cordell Flott working. I believe they were trying to target Theo Johnson on this. It was kind of a double slant on that side of the field. He kind of got his hand in there, popped
did.
it up, and it'll be Tyler Newman that gets credit for the pick
Correct.
and the return. But
Flott
Cordell
made the
Flott
play.
is the one that made
Flott
that play.
made the play.
And by the way, going against and getting around a big body tight end, and we've talked about
Yes.
Flott's size a lot. I thought that was a very nice play.
Well, very impressive because
And it was clean because there's no contact,
And
by the way.
that's
So it's clean.
that's what I was just going to add. He didn't fight his way through Johnson. He actually got around him.
Correct.
And, you have to be in good position to be able to even have a chance to make that play without going through him. Because if you're not in good position and then you try to make that play, chances are you're going to draw a flag. It's going to be pass interference.
Oh, and by the way, I should mention, Dart also had a really nice play where he play action and rolled to his left and had to re-square his body, and he threw a nice little pass down the field to 87. Who's 87? Help me out.
Smith Morset.
To Smith Marset, who was coming across. Guys, I hate to tell you, everyone's changed their numbers. I don't have no idea who
I
anybody is
know.
right now.
It's
a
brutal.
real big problem.
It's brutal.
I don't have my roster in front of me, so
It's
thank you for
brutal.
that, Paul.
I
But-
checked my roster by 4 times.
No, you have to.
I had to.
So many guys
I
have
had
changed
to.
their numbers. It makes
I know.
it very difficult. But I thought that was also a very nice throw by Dart. Again, tough for a right-handed quarterback to roll to his left, and he kind of did a really nice job. He's an athletic kid.
Yeah.
To kind of get his body around and square his shoulders to make that throw.
I liked the first one you talked about better, but that was a good play.
Yeah, they were both good plays. Paulson Adebo had a nice knockaway on a slant
He
to
did.
Pascal.
He did.
That was a nice play. You had 46, had a couple of sacks in practice today, I thought. He got in there. Brian Burns got in there. Then you had Abdul Carter on the same play where we're going to talk about the other big
Trace
defensive play in
Ford.
the secondary.
Trace Ford, 46.
Trace Ford, thank you. Same, another number I
Yeah.
don't know yet. So the same play where Dane Belton got his pick six, jumping a play in the flat.
Which was a really nice defensive
Really nice play.
by him.
The roll, don't throw late outside. Don't throw late outside. He jumped it, got the sack, but got the pick, but that throw probably never would have happened in a real game.
Right.
Because number 51, Abdul Carter, was
He
like
wa-
a missile in the backfield.
He was in there in a hurry. He was in there in a hurry. But again, I still want to give Belton credit for the anticipation.
Of course. Well, that's why I mentioned that first.
Yeah, no question. No doubt about that. But the thing about Carter, and like we said, there's no contact. John, his speed and quickness and athleticism is obvious in these drills when he's going against air. We saw what we saw at Penn State. I want to see how is he going to do in terms of shedding, disengaging, using counter moves when he actually has to contact some bigger, stronger guys in this league.
Yeah, so he
I don't know that yet.
You're afraid if he gets up against this 6'7" tackle with 34-inch arms that weighs 350
I
pounds,
don't know.
that he might just completely envelop him and not be able to get off of him.
In
I
theory,
think he's so slippery and flexible. He can get so low. I think that's going to give those bigger tackles some problems.
well, this is why he was projected to be a
Yes.
top 3 pick in the draft,
And this is
because
about-
we think he's going to be fine.
And by the way, this is also why you can't judge pass rushers until you get the pads on in the summer.
And that's exactly why I'm trying not to
Yeah,
get too
for sure.
excited
I got
about
you.
any quote potential sacks, because in these drills, the potential sacks are like, well, would it have been, would it have not have been in a real game? Well, yes, in timing factor, yes, it would have been a sack. But if he's going up against the 6'6", 340-pound tackle, maybe he wouldn't have been there. I don't know. So for me, when those plays happen, and I've always graded them this way at this time of the year, I'm more interested in did the defensive back make the play on the ball, because in his mind, it's all about what is he doing when that ball's in the air. He's not so much, involved in the play in the backfield.
Yes, absolutely. Anything else from practice today before we get to the draft real quick?
No, I think, well, I will say this. The running backs continue to show good hands.
Yeah, they caught the ball well. I
They
agree with
they
that.
throw the they've been
Tracy
throwing-
had one slant where it kind of knocked off his hands. It was a little behind him, but
It wasn't
yes.
a good.
No,
wasn't
it was
great
not
throw.
a good throw. No,
But the backs have all shown the ability to catch the ball real well.
I'm with you. All right, so let's take a look here at the 2023 draft here, Paul. And I have a couple notes here. Why don't you start with the Giants draft class, because I think that's probably a good place to start in terms of talking about what happened, and we can kind of go there with the Giants first.
Okay.
In 2023, Deonte Banks was the first pick overall. We've talked a lot about him. Again, we love the value at pick 24. At that point, we thought he was going to be off the board. Mm-hmm. So we were happy the Giants got him. Obviously, there's still work to do there, and I feel like they're going to make him earn his reps this year, right? They're going to make sure he gets his act together with the new defensive backs coach, Jeff Burris, the cornerbacks coach, Manuel, the DB's coach overall. So just, again, I think it was the right pick there. Like, I don't think there was anybody obvious that, it's not like Christian Gonzalez was sitting there.
No.
Joey Porter Jr.'s had his issues too over the course of the year. The guys picked right after Deonte Banks were Dalton Kincaid, Mozzie Smith, Anton Harrison, Miles Murphy, Brian Brzee, who's been pretty good, Nolan Smith, who's been excellent. I love Nolan Smith, by the way. So if you want to argue Nolan Smith, pick Nolan Smith. I have no argument with that. And I was on the record at the time. I love Nolan
I
Smith. He's a
remember
good
you
player.
were. It's just like I was on the record to
Yes.
want Banks as bad as I did.
No, and so was I. I wanted Banks too. That to me was almost a no-brainer pick when he came up.
But the thing about him,
And by the way, Felix Anaduki Uzama, Will Levis, Sam Laporta, Michael Mayer, Steve Avila, Derek Hall, Matthew Bergeron, Jonathan Mingo, Isaiah Foskey, B.J. Ojolari. Like, there's no except for Sam Laporta, who you can obviously make that argument
Well,
for.
yeah,
And then Brian
obviously.
Branch was he was in the 40s in round 2. There's nobody around there where you're like, oh boy, you had to pick. It would be Nolan Smith and Laporta. Those would be the two guys you would point to.
and to this point, I believe that Banks's skill set and flashes still warrant the possibility that he could turn out to be a very good value.
Yes.
It could still happen.
He just has to put it. And by the way, we talked a little bit about some of the stuff when they picked him that he was still raw in certain
Yeah.
areas, and picking up the ball in the air was one of them, right? And he hasn't quite met something. Sometimes guys can improve on that stuff. Again, we both think Jerome Henderson's excellent. We've seen him coach really well in the secondary,
No doubt.
but he wasn't able to get Banks to figure that out. We'll see if the new defensive back coaches can.
Did you write down today? I think he gave up one short pass today.
Yeah, I believe
And
that's
that was
correct,
it.
Yes.
That was it. He has not been, and when they talk about offensive linemen, if
Yep.
they don't get noticed, that's a good thing. Well, it's one thing to make a play in the secondary and knock a ball down or get a pick. That's great for sure. But the next best thing, if you're a defensive back, is not to be noticed because you didn't get burned.
All right.
He was not noticed.
John Michael Schmitz in round 2. We've talked about him a ton. A big year
Yeah.
for him. We haven't seen quite the upward trend we would have liked. Sometimes it does
No.
take offensive linemen 2 or 3 years, though. So this is a huge year for him. The Giants need him to be a good starting level player.
Yes, they do.
And be a rock in the middle. Jalen Hyatt, we already talked about. We'll see if he gets a bigger opportunity once everyone's healthy at the wide receiver position. Obviously important for him to just give you more production, Paul. I mean, he just hasn't, 2 years, 31 catches, 435 yards. It's not enough. So he needs to figure out a way to do more. He knows that, and they're working with him to do that. Eric Gray in the 5th round. He hasn't really broken through at running back.
No.
He had some of the fumbles issues on special teams. Trey Hawkins has been, again, now you're getting to 6th-round picks. You're getting to guys
Right.
that are just special teams, throw darts type of situations. Trey Hawkins, Jordan Riley, still on the roster, a 7th-round pick. I think that's a good win. You have a 7th-rounder that's been on the roster for 2 full years, so heading into year 3. I think you feel good about that.
Yeah.
And
then I would love to see him be more consistent, though, because he has shown some flashes that he can play.
And talking to Dre, like,
Coach Patterson loves him.
He just doesn't carry a thing from one play,
Correct.
from one lesson to another. So he has to do
Yeah,
that.
he just doesn't build on it as well as he should. And if somehow he can put it together, I do like his tools, John. I think he could be a good rotational player.
Got it. And then Javarius Owens, who's no longer on the roster.
No.
So, all right. So now let's go to the draft as a whole.
I want to mention
Yes.
Hawkins one thing, though.
Yeah,
About
please.
Hawkins.
Go ahead.
Hawkins, the bigger, longer corner compared to Cordell Flott. Both of them are outside. In my opinion, they're both boundary corners. I've told you, I don't like Flott in the slot. I think Flott is a better boundary corner. He plays the position better. He knows how to use the sideline. He handles that responsibility much better than he does the left go out of the slot. So for me, Hawkins and Flott is one of the things I'm going to be watching in training camp and during the preseason, because right now Flott's way ahead of him. But Flott has had injury problems. So if Flott can't stay on the field and show the Giants that he deserves to be in that spot, Hawkins may have a chance to try to wrestle that away from him and move ahead of him on the depth chart.
And we have seen flashes from him in practice.
But that's all it's
been. It hasn't showed up in games. And he's been given opportunities to show it in games too, and it has not shown up.
I think what happened when he got here, he was too raw, got thrown into the deep end of the pool so quickly.
Right.
I think it actually set him back. I really believe that. Now, he does have a nice toolbox.
Now remember, he came from Old Dominion, folks, so he was a kid that you needed to develop a little bit.
Yeah, it's not exactly a major program. So I do think that for me, folks, I'm going to let, we'll talk about this, of course, at some time down the road. But I'm telling you right now, I'm giving you a sneak preview. Flott versus Hawkins. I think Flott has a large lead, but that is a battle that I'm going to be looking for.
All right, now let's get to the draft as a whole, Paul. We'll try to get through this quickly, but it actually was a very interesting draft, believe it or not. And when I was looking through it this morning, just seeing like, all right, well, this is interesting to talk about. This is interesting to talk about. This is interesting to talk about. So let's start at the top very quickly. We can kind of take both quarterbacks, 1, 2 together. Where I think you still feel better long-term about Stroud as a quarterback than Bryce Young. But based on how they played last year, Young certainly closed the gap. Based on what we saw in year 1, he played a lot better. But I still wonder if this goes back to when all things are equal, you want to pick the guy with a little bit better tools. Stroud's a little bit bigger. He's got a little bit of a better arm. Now, I don't think he moves as well as Bryce Young does. I think Bryce Young moves a little bit better than Stroud does. But you do wonder, do you err on the side of tools there a little bit? Both guys are accurate. That's not an issue with either one of the guys. So
Stroud's better with that, though, than Young.
I think so. Young was damn accurate in college, though, man.
I know. But so far in the pros, he's had more troubles with that than the other guy.
It also helps when you're throwing over receivers that are open, like Vigo Collins. And Bryce Young has not exactly had the help around him.
Stroud has a better supporting cast. I agree with that, too.
So,
I think, don't you want to put the third quarterback in here, too? Because Anthony Richardson was right in there.
I have him next on my list. So Anthony Richardson got picked at 4th overall that year.
And I didn't like that pick there either.
And I think we all thought it was a little bit of a reach.
Yeah.
We understood the tools. And this goes back to... I want to say Trey Young. I know that's not true. Who was the quarterback the Niners took that wound up with the Cowboys? Trey Lance. Thank you.
Yeah, Lance.
Trey Lance. I wanted to keep saying Trey Young.
That's all right.
Trey Lance. Still an NBA mode. Sorry.
I know.
Both those guys just did not play a ton of football in college. And you go back to the Parcells rules that you like to bring up. You want to have, 30 games was his rule?
Oh,
give or take?
actually, if you want to have about 40-something starts, you want to have 30-plus wins. That was in one of the other categories.
Well, I think 30 starts is a good one. I think you'd like to have your quarterback come out with, definitely more than 20 to 25. Like Burrow came out, he had around 25, which was okay.
Yeah, but Richardson was as raw as an onion.
Correct. And I think some of those guys, and so was Josh Allen when he came out, but Josh Allen was able to develop. But he played more football than he did. So I think you have to worry about picking toolsies quarterbacks high that just don't have a lot of experience playing the game, especially figuring out the mental part of it, I think, is what's the most difficult thing for a quarterback, and you just don't have a lot of snaps. You need to make those reps up in the pros, and it's hard to make up reps in the pros because you're going against pros. They're not going to leave you in there if you're not good. So, I'm serious.
Well, the learning curve is not an excuse.
I forget.
That's the problem.
The old cliche, you need to do something for, 80,000 hours or 1,000 hours, whatever it is, to become an expert at it.
Mm-hmm.
He just doesn't have enough hours on task. And then he comes in, he gets hurt his rookie year. How many games has he started, Anthony Richardson? He has played 15 games in 2 years.
That's it.
So combine that with the fact that he didn't play a lot in college. Mm-hmm. He probably should be starting his NFL career now. And now he's in a competition to save his NFL career. Wow. So I think that's what I take out of the Richardson thing. Guys, even if they're great tools, if they haven't played a lot, it gets difficult.
What's interesting is, every year over the last several years, as we've started talking more and more about quarterbacks for the Giants, I've done the Parcells rules, and I've put all the quarterbacks in the class, or at least the top 10 or top 12, through the Parcells rules tests.
Yep.
Here's the funniest part, John. This past spring, I believe 11 of the consensus top 12 quarterbacks in the draft passed almost all.
And the year before, they probably did too.
There was a bunch.
Not
as many as this year.
Penix would have.
Yeah.
McCarthy wouldn't have. Jaden Daniels certainly would have. And I think probably Drake May. Drake May started 30 games, right, over the course of 3 years. So you're looking at half of that class.
This year's, though, was even better in terms of checking those boxes than last year's, and yet it was not a great class in terms of talent.
Correct.
So I guess the lesson to be learned from that philosophy, and again, in a way, Richardson would have fit into this because he did not check very many of the Parcells boxes at all. But the lesson to be learned is, even if you check all the boxes, if you don't have the toolbox, honestly, it's a problem. You still need the toolbox, no matter how many boxes.
That's why you need both.
Yeah.
You need both.
The tuna checklist is a great thing to use, but it's not the whole enchilada.
Correct. Okay. Now, the other pick in the top 10, actually, there's two pockets here. Tyree Wilson at 7 overall.
Yeah.
We talked about that as a big-time traits pick, but not a lot of production as a pass rusher. And you could even throw Lucas Van Ness into that category at number 13. Great traits, not a lot of production in college. Wilson did have 2 7-sack years, but it just wasn't consistent enough game to game. And I think we're seeing you want some level of production from your pass rusher in college to guarantee you it's going to translate. Now, do you have exceptions to the rule where guys didn't do a ton of college and it works? Yes. But I think you are taking more of a risk when you're picking a guy. And I think Wilson was an older prospect too. Wasn't he like 24 years old or something
Don't remember that.
Right?
I don't remember that.
But that's something you have to take a look at. He was age 20. Let's see, when was he born? He's 25 now. So he was 23 when he got drafted.
Okay.
That's an older prospect, right? So if you're going to be an older prospect, you better have some really good production. And just rolling the dice on traits only at that spot, I think, could be a little bit risky.
When I looked at this, when I got your message, John, about what we were doing, I looked at it as the next 10 to 20 group. And the one guy that stuck out to me that I wanted to comment on was Jack Campbell. Because we talked about him at that combine as he was the one kind of throwback inside linebacker.
Yeah, bigger guy.
Right?
Yep.
The more sturdy guy.
He was like 245 coming out.
Stout, has some good hitting skills about him, smart. This guy's going to be a good run stuffer. But the question was, in today's game, as it's morphed, how is he going to do in this NFL?
And I think he struggled a little bit as a rookie, but I think we saw a big jump in his second year.
Big jump this past year.
Yeah,
he seems to have gotten it. And I think, so for me at 18, that's still an interesting pick because you don't
a little rich still, I think, but
you don't see middle linebackers or inside backers going in the top 20.
You don't.
And when he got taken there, we were surprised, even though we knew he was the best one of the crop.
Yeah, I think we both liked him at the top of the second round.
Right.
Yeah.
And he went really high for us, and that's the first name. When I looked at that group of 10, the first thing that stuck out to me was I remember talking about him a lot. And look, the Lions are not sorry about the production they're getting out of him now.
No.
But at the time, 18 seemed rich.
In retrospect, what do you think about the running backs at 8 and 12? Bijan Robinson at 8 and Gibbs at 12. Because that's always a debate we have. How high should you pick the running back, right?
Yeah, I mean, the toolbox has translated for both players.
Okay, but let me put it this way. Would the Falcons be better off if they took Jalen Carter?
Probably.
Would the Lions be better off if they took Christian Gonzalez?
I don't know.
I think they've been hunting for corners for a
while. I know.
I think they probably would be, but both those players, I think, have given their teams enough to justify the selections.
I agree with that.
But I still wonder,
could they have done better?
Could they have done better?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a fair debate.
Yes.
But I would also agree with your first statement that I think they got enough value that they're not sorry about the picks.
I agree with that. One other thing I wanted to mention, the top 10, I jumped over it to go to the quarterback.
Yeah.
Will Anderson has been a really good NFL player. He has
No doubt.
18 sacks in his first 2 years.
Yeah. I'm curious now. Where are you going with this one? Because I think he's pretty good.
Was it worth trading the 12th overall pick, the 33rd overall pick, and a 1 and a 3 the following year to get him there?
Not to this point.
And that's where I'm going.
Oh, okay.
Because
that's fair.
Because and the Texans did get a 4th round pick back, in fairness. Ooh. But now you look at the Houston roster and how they're capped out in a lot of ways. They just had to trade their starting left tackle.
Those other players.
They couldn't have used
a
1, a 2, and a 3 to fill holes on that offensive line. C.J. Stroud's great. If you can't protect, who cares?
Right.
Who cares? So while Will Anderson's been great, and
he's
a
really good player.
No, again, really good player. Like if you're just picking him 3rd overall, that's a good pick.
But the price.
The price to move up to do it, in the end, even though he was everything they thought he was going to be.
And he is.
And he is. This is not a criticism of the player or them targeting the player.
Not at all.
But would they like to have those other picks instead so they could have 2 offensive linemen and then some other pass rusher that they could have picked a little bit later in the draft?
To your point, they paid for a Bentley and they got a Cadillac. Nothing wrong with that.
No, I think they got the Bentley, but instead of paying $100,000 for the Bentley, they paid $500,000
Oh, okay.
for the Bentley.
That's fine. Well, you're disparaging
You know what I mean?
Cadillac.
Oh, no, Cadillacs are great. Cadillacs are awesome.
So is Will Anderson.
I know, but Bentley's more expensive than a Cadillac.
Yes, well,
Cadillac's an equally awesome car, but they're more expensive. I'm
Yes.
going for the price thing here, right?
Yes, that's what I meant.
Correct.
They paid for a Bentley, but they got a Cadillac because they got a really terrific, great
I think
player, but they paid for a Bentley.
No matter how much you pay, I think you're happy when you get a Cadillac.
That's also true.
I think that's important to note.
I agree with that, and I think also they're happy they have Will Anderson.
Yes, but I do
the
wonder
regret,
about
buyer's remorse
you
for
talk
the price.
about whether it's worth it trading up what you have to get a non-quarterback.
Right.
And I think that is a prime example right there.
It's a great example.
Because it's an elite player at an elite position, but you're still wondering, did it cost you too much?
For Anderson to have made that price pay off, he would have had to probably have had 30 sacks in his first 2 years instead of what he has now.
I don't know if it was possible. Because it's not, what rookie has ever had 30 sacks in his first 2 years?
Not disagreeing. But
that's what I'm saying.
I think to make it pay off, he would, and to boot, right? I don't know what his tackle numbers were his first 2 years aside from his sacks. Let's see here, because aside from
I got it here. 56 solo tackles.
That's not bad, but again, I probably would have wanted to see, 30 sacks over the first 2 years, which is really unrealistic.
56 solo, 82 combined.
And
with assists.
For both years?
Combined.
Oh, that's not enough.
So he's looking at 40 tackles a year.
To make that pick worth it, he would have had to have unrealistic numbers of 30 combined sacks and probably about 150 tackles.
All right. Now I want to run through a couple other things real quick. We laughed and couldn't believe it at the time. The Emmanuel Forbes over Christian Gonzalez pick.
I know.
Guys, weight matters at corner. Like, he was too small, and it did not work. Is he even on a roster right now?
It's a good question.
Why don't you look that up? Yeah. I don't think that he is, but it's worth a look. Quentin Johnson at 21. We talked about he was kind of you have to be able to imagine, Paul, what the role for the player is going to be.
Forbes is with the Rams right now.
He's with the Rams. Yeah. So you have to be able, when you draft a player, you want to imagine what their role is going to be, what type of receiver they're going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought Quentin Johnston, I couldn't figure out what he was.
Right.
He was a bigger body receiver that wasn't good at contested catches. He didn't separate well, but he was a good run after the catch. And I couldn't find another NFL player that fit that criteria that I could say, all right, he's going to be that type of guy. And I think it's proven out that he's had trouble finding a niche in the league a little bit. And among that group of wide receivers in the middle end of the first round.
4 in a row.
But Smith and Jigba has been good.
He's the disappointment.
Zay Flowers has been good. Jordan Addison has been good. He's the one. Where you had trouble figuring out what. And by the way, and I was going to bring this up later, but I'll do it now. Jonathan Mingo did not work out in round 2. Again, a guy that did not separate particularly well.
That's
so
true.
Beware guys that don't separate. That's a rule here. But then you had Jaden Reed, who I was a big fan of that year.
I remember.
He hit in round 2. And then Rashee Rice, who I thought he was more of a third round.
We liked him.
But he hit at the end of round 2. So there were other wide receivers. And then Tank Dell, by the way, was the first wide receiver picked in round 3. So you had other guys that hit there. And even Marvin Mims, who has not been an every down guy, he's proven to be a deep threat for them. He's been a big play wide receiver for them in Denver. So, and he was an end of the second round pick. So I thought the wide receiver class is always interesting to look at, where you only had 4 second round wide receivers that year. And then you had in round 3, you had Tank Dell, Jalen Hyatt, Cedric Tillman, Josh Downs in round 3. He's a really good player. I remember I can't believe he lasted as long as he did. Michael Wilson's been okay for the Cardinals. He's been fine. And Trey Tucker has actually carved out a nice little role for him with the Raiders as a deep threat at the end of round 3. He's been pretty good too. So that was interesting. Going back to the first round very quickly. A lot of times, Paul, I think we...
Well, could you just stick with receiver for a minute?
Yeah, go ahead. What do you got? Please.
Cedric Tillman.
Yeah. He was picked right after Hyatt. Hasn't done much.
And
again, not a separator.
He was not. But going in, we did think that he was going to be one of those higher level guys, even though he did not show great separation. A lot of people thought he'd be a second rounder. He went in the third after Hyatt.
Yeah, he was also one of the guys. There weren't many big wide receivers in this draft, so if you wanted a bigger wide receiver, that was the guy you had to pick.
And again, you know how I always loved those guys.
And keep in mind, too.
To me, he's been a disappointment with Johnston.
Tillman also has not exactly been in a great situation in Cleveland with the guys throwing him the football.
No.
Quentin Johnston's had Justin Herbert.
Yes.
A little bit different there.
Yes.
Like maybe if Tillman's in a better spot, he gives you a little bit more. It's possible.
Maybe.
I don't know. But yes, your point stands. I think sometimes you talk about certain positions and players being safe. And I think that's probably not as true as often as we want it to be.
Okay.
Because I think when the Cowboys picked Mozzie Smith at pick 26, we're like, it's not a sexy pick, but it's a high floor pick.
We all thought
you're going to get a guy that can stuff the run, extend the arm, shed, and tackle. He's been terrible for them.
Agreed.
And we thought that was a beast. Because, look, you saw him doing college at an extremely high level.
No question.
Exactly what you wanted to do with
you
wanted
thought
him to do with the pros.
You were buying what you saw. It wasn't about potential with him. It was about production. He was very good against the run.
The only potential part, can he develop a pass rush game?
Right.
That was the potential part.
But if he didn't, you still thought you were getting a dominant run stopper.
And it has not.
You didn't get it.
It has not been that way.
Did not get it.
So I think we have to be careful sometimes assuming some guys are safe when maybe nobody's safe.
Well, that's how GMs get fired.
Correct. No, I know. We talked about Laporta at 34, really good pick. And again, back-to-back Laporta and Mayer, right? Mayer was supposed to be the top tight end in that class. So Kincaid went in round 1. I still think he's been a little bit of a disappointment. I don't like the way the Bills use him.
Yeah.
But anyway, Laporta at 34. I was a huge fan of his.
You were bigger on him. I was bigger on Mayer. So far, I've lost.
We talk about tight ends being a traits position, right?
Yeah.
And people height, weight, speed at tight end. Well, Sam Laporta's RAS score, relative athletic score, 9.01. Mayer's just 7.6.
Yeah.
And you look at it, that translates with the way they've shown up in the pros, right? We've seen the athleticism and explosiveness of Laporta. Now, Mayer, keep in mind, they drafted Brock Bowers the following year. So he's not going to get as many targets as Brock Bowers being targeted a billion times. I get that. But the athleticism hasn't popped enough for Mayer, in my opinion, to make him more of that difference-making tight end.
I totally concur. But that same along the lines of what you just said philosophically is one of the reasons why the Giants are so high on Theo Johnson.
He was a 9.9, 8.9, 8.9,
he
whatever it was. His
the RAS scores.
And by the way, so did Fedoni this year.
And
so did Bellinger, by the way. So the Giants draft traits-based tight ends. That's what they do.
I won't say who, but a long-time former player actually mentioned to me that they think the Giants' tight end room is stacked. A lot of people don't think that.
I think it's stacked with potential. It's not stacked with players yet.
Right, and that's fair. That's fair. But there's a lot of tools in that room.
There are tools, yes, but can they tools be put to good use to build the right thing?
I know.
Last one I'll bring up is just pick good football players. Like slot corner has become a very important position in the National Football League, Paul. And the fact that Brian Branch was sitting there at pick number 45 that year was a joke. And we said it at the time.
Yes, we did.
It was a joke at the time when we saw it happen.
Yep.
There was no reason. And he played more safety last year than he did slot. It was about 50-50. The first year was almost a slot-only guy. But that you're just sitting there in the second round and a really good player sitting there, just pick the player. I don't care where he plays.
Yep.
Just pick the player. Once you get to the second round, you got a great player. I don't care where he plays. Pick the player.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that, John. And, that's why when you talk about the board and they talk about clustering guys and you're talking about positions and then ranks and where's the value and where, you want need to match value. But when value sticks out like a sore thumb,
pick the guy.
You just got to do it.
Even if it's not a elite position.
That's it. You just got to do it. It's like this guy should have been taken 10 picks ago and he's sitting here. You got to do it. You just got to do it. And if I'm not mistaken, who was it? Was it Alexander this year?
Yeah, round 3.
Yeah.
Where they said he stuck out like a sore thumb.
He stuck out like a sore thumb.
Mm-hmm.
I believe somebody from the organization, whether it was Coach Dable or Joe Shane, said that, originally at that spot, they were thinking
Joe Shane told us that. Joe Shane told
in
us
our
that.
interview,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Where he said they thought that the way the board was falling, they were probably going to go with a different position there. But when Alexander, basically has fireworks shooting out of his head, we got to get that guy.
Absolutely.
I mean, come on. We can't pass him up.
All right, folks. Sorry for going a little long on our chat today, but I thought that was an instructive one. I thought
fun.
it was a fun draft to learn some lessons from in terms of how you evaluate some of these guys. All right, don't forget, folks, the Giants Huddle podcast is up on the Giants app, all podcast platforms, giants.com/podcast, YouTube channel. Check it out. A lot of good stuff is up there right now. I talked about Papa last week. We have Marcus Johnson, Marcus Bose, offensive line coach, Thomas Fedoni's tight end coach is up there. We have a couple more guys coming up this week. We're going to have Mike Gundy, who is Black's defensive backs coach at Oklahoma State. We're going to have next week, I got Cam Scatterbo's running backs coach from Arizona State, so that's coming up. The Jason
Did you tape him
Candle.
yet?
I did that on Friday.
Oh, good.
I did Jason Candle, head coach at Toledo of Darius Alexander. That's going up next couple of weeks. So make sure you go check that on the Giants Huddle podcast. And don't forget to go think about getting a Giants season ticket membership. Impactful draft, fun schedule, great opponents at home. Take your fans to the next level with a season ticket membership. Catch all the action at MetLife Stadium. With a membership, you'll also stay connected to the club all year round, not just on game days, exclusive member access and benefits. To learn more, go to giants.com/tickets. All right, Paul, let's get to the calls. 201-939-4513. We'll get to as many people as we can. We'll take them in the order they came in. So it's going to be Jason first, then Shakes, then Rob. Let's lead off with Jason in New Haven. He's up first today. Jason, what's up?
What's up, fellas? How you guys doing?
We're good, man.
Hi.
Good. Yeah, just quick points. I enjoyed the conversation you two gentlemen just had about the 23 draft. And, what I've always said, man, the draft is one of the biggest crapshoots in all the sports. Yeah, you could do all your homework, and I know the front offices around the league do their homework, talk to everybody, test these guys out, Wonderlic test, but you really don't know until they get on the field. And it's not just the Giants. I know
it's very hard.
The national narrative, the Giants, they draft players that don't work out. Well, it's just not the Giants. I've heard a lot of names on that list you guys have from the 23 draft that haven't really contributed much. So that was just a great convo you guys had. I enjoyed it.
Well, Jason, I will put it this way. I think we were all in agreement here, as much as it might pain for us to say it, that one of the best drafting teams in the National Football League are the Philadelphia Eagles, correct? They're very good drafters, and they're very good at what they do. Well, I'm going to go back to the 2020 NFL draft. The Eagles are sitting there at pick number 21, and they selected Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson.
Yeah.
So even the best teams can make catastrophic mistakes.
It happens in basketball, too.
Absolutely. Basketball is a little bit tougher because there's only so many good players, but yes.
You consider all the manpower hours and all the millions and millions of dollars that are put into a scouting department and a personnel department. Do you think anybody intentionally wants to make a mistake?
It's hard. It's hard.
You know what I
It's
mean?
hard.
Absolutely not.
So, anyway, Frank Ragnow, according to Pat McAfee, has informed the Detroit Lions he plans to retire.
Wow.
This was after he was in a contract dispute and was hoping to get a better deal out of them after becoming a 4-time Pro Bowl center.
Didn't they draft a center this
I mean,
year?
my goodness, I don't know. I don't know if they did.
They
but
draft. Whoa, that's interesting. So our lads has Tate Radledge listed as a center on their depth chart.
Well, he was a guard / center, but with the potential.
Mostly guard. I don't
Mostly
think
guard.
He
Mostly
didn't
guard.
play center in games
But
for him,
with
did
the,
he?
I don't think he did, but there was some potential. People
Yeah,
thought
I
he had
remember that.
flex.
Correct.
But Ragnar, this just came over. I'm sorry to interrupt you. But yeah, Pat McAfee just posted this on Twitter a couple seconds ago. Frank Ragnar, wow, that's a big blow for the Lions.
Yeah, he's a great player. So they lost now him and Zeitler this offseason,
Yes.
which is tough.
Yes.
Yeah, so just 3 quick points so you get other callers. I'll make a bullet points, and then
Yeah.
I'll take the answers off the air.
Sure.
I'm bullish on the tight end room. I called a few weeks ago. Maybe it was Paul on the call or John. I don't remember specifically. But I did state that since Joe Shane has been here, he has a thing for tight ends with that high RAS score. And Fedone is draft, then Theo, now Fedone. Me personally, I could see the Giants keeping all 4 tight ends on the roster because I don't think Fedone will go through waivers. And I think they like Manhurts for the blocking and Bellinger. So
I think they will too,
that.
Jason. I agree. I think they're going to keep 4.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning that way. I don't see Fedone clearing waivers. I think another team would scoop him up.
But by the way, you have a good comment about him liking high RAS tight ends. Darren Waller was like 9.3.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's another guy too. You're seeing the trend. You absolutely identified that trend correctly.
Yeah. So and then the last 2 points. Russell, I'm excited about Russell. I think Giants fans and some football fans, just as a whole, think that if you don't have a top 5 or top 10 quarterback, you can't make a playoff run. And I think that's just I think that narrative is kind of old to me. I think he by far will be the best quarterback we've had since Eli. Now, yes, he's on the back 9 of his career, but, we've seen quarterbacks, and I'm not saying he will, but we have seen quarterbacks playing to the late 30s, early 40s at a pretty high level. So I'm excited about him. And then the last point, I know you guys mentioned Deontay Banks, JMS, and I'm going to kind of group Kayvon in this group just for the sake of an argument. I'm particularly not giving up on those 3. I know you guys didn't mention Kayvon. I know you mentioned the other 2, but like I said, just group him in. These guys are still young players. Kayvon, 24. I think JMS is the oldest of the trio. I forgot how old he is. And then Banks is a young player too. And while they have their warts, we all know that progression as a player isn't always linear. It's not like a plane where you just take off, you get to 30,000 and it's just smooth sailing. You're going to have some bumps, some ups and downs. So it's not for you two, but just other Giants fans that have kind of been down on these young players. Let's give these guys a shot. I thought Kayvon had a nice year. I think people get stuck on, well, he was the 5th overall pick. He was supposed to give us 15 sacks every year. I don't necessarily believe that. JMS, I thought he had a good year last year. Was he the best center in the league? No, but I thought he made some strides, especially with 2 veteran guards. And then Banks, he had a down year, but I'm not giving up on young players. And just for the sake of argument, I'll take this off the air. Social media and the new, social media, sports media, fans, NFL fans as a whole, it's a good thing it wasn't around back in the day, because I'm gonna bring up 2 players, and I'll take your answer off the air. If social media and the way people are so quick to give up on young players was around back in the day, we wouldn't have 2 great players, right, in our Giants franchise history. One is a Hall of Famer, and one was an integral part of the 08 Super Bowl, right? People forget Strahan, Hall of Famer, Honor of Ring member, But people forget his first 4 years were very underwhelming. I know he was a lower draft. I think he was a second or third round pick.
Well, he also broke his foot.
Right, absolutely. But I'm just
By
saying,
the way,
from
so
a
did
numbers
Justin
and
Tuck.
sack
When
perspective,
Justin Tuck came in, same thing happened with Tuck. He broke his foot early.
He wasn't a high sack guy his first. And boom, he exploded.
Right. Ripped his ACL twice.
Yep. And then last player, Corey Webster, right? For the young people
Mm-hmm.
that weren't around for those Super Bowl runs, the 08 Super Bowl run. People don't realize how down people were on Corey Webster when he was drafted, after the second round out of LSU. He had some up and down years. And then what happened? Sometimes it takes players some time. Things clicked, and he was an integral part of the 08 season. So I just want to say to all the fans, just, don't down all these young players. They're still growing. Like I said, Kayvon is 24 years old. Like, he's still progressing. Give these guys a shot, because you know what's going to happen? Oh, we don't want Kayvon, or you know what happened? He'll be a free agent. He'll go to the Eagles and get 16 sacks.
Jason, remember this. Kayvon also had the sprained MCL, which really hurt him a lot during his rookie season.
Hey, look,
set him back.
I'll add this, though, too. There was sports talk radio back then, so there were plenty of avenues for people to be down on players.
Oh, yeah. Well, and by the way, Webster, it was 2007 when he helped the Giants win that Super Bowl, not 8.
Well,
it was 7.
The game wasn't 8.
Yeah.
But it was the 7th season.
See, here's the thing, though, Jason, and this is where, while I agree with your point, this is also a coaching point, because the player and the coach have to meet somewhere in the middle. It is the responsibility of the position coach and the coordinator, as much as it is the player, to make the proper adjustments and to adapt and to learn each other and to find the best way to maximize the guy's performance. That's the responsibility of everybody involved, John. It's not just on the player, and it's not just on the coach. Everybody's got to work together.
Absolutely. I'm with you on that. Let me just comment on his Russell Wilson point.
Yeah.
You don't need a top 5 quarterback to make a playoff run, but if you don't have a top 10-ish quarterback, it is very hard to win a Super Bowl. It's very hard.
I don't have a problem with that.
I know. I'm trying to argue with you. I was just commenting on what he said.
Yeah.
And then the other part of it, too, he goes, quarterbacks now regularly play deep into their 30s. I think we're finding out that Tom Brady was an exception.
Well,
has Aaron Rodgers been great into his late 30s? Did Peyton Manning play great into his late 30s? Did Drew Brees play great into his late 30s? They all dropped off in that 38-ish type of area.
Yeah, I think Wilson's getting closer to that point. I don't think he's quite there yet, though.
No, I agree with that. I'm just making the point to a general point where we say guys can play into their early 40s and still be really good. There's really only one guy that's played into his early 40s and been really, really good, and it's Tom Brady.
There's a law of diminishing returns, and even though I do believe that you can be in the league till you're 40 and maybe even be a competent backup, I think to play as a high-level starter, late 30s is where it starts getting a little sketchy.
Yeah,
I can understand
you start
that.
hitting 37, 38, and it starts getting tough.
That's where, you got to start keeping an eye out.
That's where Cousins is now, right? And he had a big down year last year. It's just, it gets tougher.
Well, and part of that is because the beating that you take over the course of those years takes a toll.
Absolutely. All right, we got 2 more calls. Let's get them in before we say goodbye here. Shakes in Baltimore, Maryland. Shakes, what's going on, man?
What's going on, fellas?
How are you?
Great conversations. Yeah. What sparked me with a few topics here. So y'all talked about the 2023 draft.
Yeah.
And the thing about it, what I was going to talk about with that draft here is these guys like Banks, JMS, Hyatt, their time is now. This is the time that they have to show something, because for Banks and Hyatt, they showed promise in that rookie season, but then kind of regressed in that second.
Shakes, I say it all the time, man. You don't rely on your rookie class to elevate your team. You're relying on your second, third, and 4-year guys to elevate your team and improve. I'm with you on that 100%.
Yeah, so, and they did regress, but I can remember, and y'all brought up a fact of Webster, right? The last caller, Webster. And I remember, because y'all know my memory is great. So I remember Webster showed promise in his rookie season, but regressed in his second season.
You know why, Shakes? He was a press man corner. and they had him playing off coverage in zone, and that's not what he was playing.
Well, I think Shakes, are you trying to make
Banks?
that's it.
That's what
Oh,
I'm
there's a
saying,
comparison
right?
here. I've been making this comparison for the last year.
Right.
It's possibly Corey Webster 2.0. It very well could be with Banks. It very well could be.
I'm just saying, right? And then back then we took Aaron Ross, right, from Texas, to try to be that number one corner. Now we just got Paul Debo. So I'm just comparisons, you know what I'm saying? Just comparisons. But I think that those guys have to step up in this second season, or in this third season. They have to show that they are that player that they showed the promise in. Because if they show the player that they showed in regressing, it's not going to be good for.
Come on, Shakes. Use my term. I want to get copyright money on this. They're show me players. They are show me players.
They are.
I know.
And it's for their money and it's for their families. All right. Also, right, y'all was talking down on Quentin Johnston. Now, not so much, but I kind of took a little offense to it because this was my guy, right? And
I didn't know he was your guy, Shakes. I didn't know he was your guy.
Yeah. So, in that draft class, I believe I came on BBK and said, look, Quentin Johnston, I like him, the big body receiver, and P. Dot was down with that. But here's my thing. I also said in that process that it's going to take a year for him because he was so young, you know what I'm saying, and so raw, that it's going to take a year for him to learn. And it shows in rookie season, 38 receptions, 431 yards, 2 touchdowns.
He was much better in his second year. You're right about that. He was much better.
Absolutely. Last year, 55 receptions, 711 yards, 8 touchdowns. And that is what you got him for, is the red zone threat. So don't be too down on my boy.
Nah, Shakes, look, you're fair. No, look, Shakes, he
Okay.
made good progress in year 2, and if he continues that trajectory, that's going to turn out to be an okay pick. That's very fair.
Absolutely. And
There's
he's
more to
only
come there. I
23
think
years
that's
old.
fair. You're right. That's fair.
Yeah.
But
And
I
he's
do
only
think that he
23.
has not been as spectacular maybe right out of the box as they would have liked. I think that's fair,
Right.
too.
And I don't think nobody – well, I didn't think that. But
Okay.
anyway, my question that I'm taking off the air for y'all, and thank y'all for taking my call, I wanted to know from y'all's perspective, how are the quarterbacks and the wide receivers connecting so far? Like, how is their connection going? And, like, you know, in routes and breaks and stuff like that, you know, a quarterback and a wide receiver has to be in sync. So I want to know, like, how are they connecting so far? And, again, thank you for taking my call.
Good. Shakes, it's great to have you back in the mix, man.
Welcome.
Love to have
Yep.
you call.
Always.
in, man.
Always.
Big fan. You know, it's OTAs, it's spring. I haven't seen guys like not on the same page on a lot of this stuff.
No.
Has stuff maybe not been in perfect stride and things of that nature, maybe, but it's the spring. I mean, that type of stuff is expected. So there's been nothing, Shakes, that I would consider to be a red flag.
See, I'm going to double down on John's comment about it's just OTAs because, remember, there's no contact. So if nobody is pressing these guys, nobody is jamming these guys, and nobody in the secondary is playing them extra close because they can't touch them, to be frank, it's kind of easy to get excited about completed passes, but there's not a lot of true conditions going on. So I think John is right. The one thing you always look for is guys who totally bust a play because then the coach is going to give him heck. I haven't seen hardly any of guys getting reamed out because they're busting plays. They seem to be on the same page. And in terms of the throws, yeah, they're not the hardest throws to make because routes are not being jostled and wide receivers are not worried about getting hit. So that does make it easier to hit your target accurately. But yes, I would say they've done well. There's nothing alarming there that I've seen, John. But what does it really account for?
We're broadcasting from our podcast studio, presented by Hackensack and Meridian Health. Keep getting better. Let's wrap things up with Rob in Rochester. Pardon me. You're with us here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. What's up, Rob?
Hey, gentlemen. How you doing?
We're good.
Got the All-Star team in today.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. I just want to give a quick shout out to my buddy Paul, my best friend, born January 3rd, 1981, the same day as Eli Manning, and he's got a little boy named Eli.
Wow.
Just a great Giants fan, and I just want to give him a quick shout.
All the best.
Tell him I love him.
Sure, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Same age as me, man. 43. We're getting old.
Yeah, dude, it happens quick.
It happens real fast, man.
Quick message to our regulars. My boy Wilson, my boy Charlie, I love you guys, but let's keep some optimism, dudes. Come on. It's the off season. We haven't even gotten here yet. This is my favorite time of the year. We haven't even done a training camp. Nobody's hit anybody. What are we waiting for? Why you got to naysay us yet?
No, look, Rob, I'm with you. Look, if you can't have some fun and have some hope at this point of the year, I mean, I don't know what you're doing.
Well, the thing is, like, this is a sport that brings a lot of joy to a lot of people, so why don't we, do that?
Some people don't like joy, Rob. Some people like to be angry.
Yes.
And by the way, and I'm not even putting Wilson and Charlie, maybe Charlie a little bit into that
I'm not
category.
throwing anybody under the bus, but I understand realism versus optimism versus, pessimism.
Yes, correct.
Who was that comedian? Was it Richard Lewis, who was always like down all the time?
Yes, Richard Lewis.
Right? All of his humor was like negative humor.
Rest in
Everything was
peace,
a
by the
bummer.
way, Richard Lewis.
Yes, for sure. Absolutely. But, yeah, I understand. Those guys are the Richard Lewises of our show.
Yeah. Well, for what it's worth, don't suck the fun out of it, guys. Let's try to have some fun.
We're trying.
I wanted to talk about, you guys have fun all the time.
We try, man. We do.
So sometimes they don't make it easy on us, Rob, but we try.
Oh, man.
I know you guys are the hardest working dudes in the biz, so I can. And no other franchise has the internal media situation that you guys have. You guys kill it every day. I love your content.
I appreciate
know more
that.
about the
Thank you,
league
Rob.
every day. Holy cow, you guys are so informed.
Thank you.
I wanted to talk about defense. So we're talking about personnel on defense all the time, and it's really a lot to digest, but I think it's going to be pretty simple for this defense. Get after the quarterback and be able to run, nickel cover two. If we can do that, we're going to get after some quarterbacks.
Yeah, just don't allow the big plays over the top, right?
Well, bend don't break, yes, but it's going to be personnel specific, and
Sure.
I'm worried about that nickel corner spot.
Really? Why? Drew Phillips is pretty good. Why are you worried about Drew Phillips?
Well, I worry about depth. I worry about experience.
All right,
that
I'll buy.
Is it youth versus talent? And what if it's a bad matchup for them?
I would
What
be
if
more
somebody's
worried, Rob,
bigger,
about
longer?
I'd be more worried about their second outside corner, to be honest with you, rather than the slot guy.
Yeah, I mean, right now, after Debo and after Banks, we just discussed this. It looks like Flott / Hawkins. Now, Flott has trouble staying healthy, and Hawkins has been so raw, he's yet to really, be what he might be able to be. So
And Banks hasn't proven that he's a...
No, Banks has been inconsistent as a starter. This is why, and just give me half a second here. This is why we've said this, John, the last couple of months on the show, when I've said if you could add somebody else, I would not mind adding, a veteran corner. Like, remember some years ago when they added Sensabaugh, they added Leon Hall. If you could add a veteran corner,
Special teamers too.
it wouldn't be such a bad idea just to have somebody.
Who was the corner that eventually went to the Ravens? Isaac Yadam is another guy that they added at corner who ended up being a nice player. Correct,
Yeah,
yes.
former Bronco and Packer. I mean, if you could get one of those guys, who's got some experience, may not have a lot of mileage still left on his tires, but if he's on the depth chart, he doesn't have to play all the time.
Yeah.
Well, if you play 12 plays a game, good, you're fine. But
Yeah,
if you can't
so
stop the
I'd be
run
all
and
for
cut
that.
our corners, the quarterback's going to have too much time. So schematically, I think that's a little bit of a variable in this defense. I don't know how we're going to find our identity early on against some of these powerhouse offenses that are really going to try to pick us apart, and we're going to run that soft zone and get, bend don't break, get killed down the field, or short intermediate, or just on mesh routes. It doesn't matter.
Well, Rob, I will
If
say
we
this.
Don't get after the quarterback.
I will say this, Rob. What we have seen in OTAs so far, and again, we've literally had 2 days of red zone where there's not a lot of space anyway. But at least today, from what we saw, there was not a ton of cushion outside.
Oh,
So
I
I
like
think
that.
we've seen a little bit of a higher level of aggression from the corners. Like the interception today, Belton breaking on a ball short outside in the flat, and the other interception came on a little slant that Flott played pretty tightly, deflected it up in the air, and he knocked into Newbin. So you have not seen a bunch of these really short, easy completions, at least so far. Again, it's super early. OTAs are OTAs, but at least we haven't seen that yet.
We're playing this wide 9 aggressive style defense, which I like, but it's really hard to stop the run when you're that wide. So if we can't do that on early downs, we're not going to be able to pin our ears
No,
back.
that's true too.
I'm real curious to see what Shane Bowen truly wants to do.
And thank you, Rob. We got to run, man. We're
as
late.
a
Thank you.
coordinator. I can't wait to training camp because then we'll get a chance to really see what he wants to run.
Hey, look, and there's an argument that if you have a really good pass rush and you don't have to blitz a lot, play man.
Right.
Because if you get in people's grill and the quarterback doesn't have much time,
disrupt
and
timing.
you press
That's
at
it.
the line,
That's it.
you know, then your cornerbacks don't have to cover for that long, and it becomes tougher on the offense if you're getting a pass rush and you're not allowing quick, easy passes.
You know, but we won't know until they're actually able to start hitting and maybe
Paul,
the dual
we're not-
practices.
We're not
you
going to
know.
know till we get to regular season games. Because they're going to practice
No,
zone
you're
and they're going
right.
to practice man. We're
No,
not going to know
you're
until
right,
we get into
you're
games.
right. And even in the preseason games, they'll be vanilla.
Oh, super
So
vanilla.
we're not going
Correct.
we're not going to see.
No idea.
You're right, John. It's going to take the first couple of games to really see what he wants to do. But I would hope, and he himself said this to us at the end of last season, that he's learned more about this team and his staff. I hope through that education he makes adjustments.
Hey, big year for him. They added a lot of players have been added on
They
defense.
gave him
There's
toys.
a lot of talent there. So there's
Yes.
no talent deficiency here. Like, look, last year you had a super young secondary. You had a bunch of rookies and second-year guys.
He had a thin defensive line, too.
In a very complicated defensive scheme in the back end. So I get it, all right?
Yep.
Like, I get that. All right, big week coming your way this week, guys, on Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the Giants. We're going to do our NFC East position group rankings. So it's going to start with me and Matt Sytak on Wednesday, and then Paul and Lance will do theirs on Friday, and we will keep track of those in the doc for the end of the year. Last year, we all underrated Washington a little bit.
Yep.
In years prior, we were pretty on top of it, being the Eagles and Cowboys at the top. So we'll see what it looks like this year. You kind of rank each position group 1 through 4 with the 4 division teams, and we'll see where that comes out. So that'll be Wednesday and Friday. Tomorrow, we don't have a topic yet. Paul and Matt will work that out. I'm sure we can find something interesting to do tomorrow. There's an OTA, so we'll go over what happened in OTA number 5. And then the media here is for OTA on Thursday, by the way. So our Thursday show will be the one that gets pushed back to 2:30. So just FYI on that. Push back to 1:30, not 2:30, right?
1:30, yes.
From
I was
1:30
going to say, you shocked me.
1:30 to 2:30, pardon me, on Thursday. So make sure you guys go check that out. Johnny Mack, excellent work. For Paul Dottino, I am John Schmeelk. Thanks for joining us on Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the Giants. I had a fun conversation today, Paul. I think this was a good talk, good NFL talk, good draft talk, good Giants talk. Excellent callers as usual, and we'll talk to you guys on Tuesday.